All right. Welcome to another edition of Artizen Talks. I am joined with Brent Bushnell, an old friend from my days in the immersive art and entertainment universe. I always start these talks by giving a completely unprepared introduction of who the person is, based purely on my own perspective of like how I know them, and then they get to fill in all the blanks. So I know Brent because he ran this thing called Two Bit Circus. And I first discovered Two Bit Circus at an event called The Future of Storytelling. And there's somebody on your team that was there in 2014, 2015. And you had this, that was you. Okay, brilliant. You had, I don't remember who I met, but I remember the experience, which is probably the important thing anyways. It was this vibrating platform that you got to stand on, and you got to feel the sounds of the experience in a way that I hadn't before. It was the first like haptic virtual reality project that I was exposed to. Wow. And it really opened my eyes about like how the best kind of VR isn't just for your eyes and ears, but it's something that engages your whole body. And that's the through line that it seems like most of your work does, where it's trying to engage the audience in sort of a full body form of play. And the other thing that's so interesting about what Brent does is that you experiment with pop-ups, permanent installations, where all these ideas get to be explored with real people at a meaningful enough volume that I'm sure you have learned a tremendous amount of, like, you know, what works, what doesn't, why. I imagine, if I'm putting myself into your shoes, that you have all these insights around, you know, like this bag of tricks that you've developed. The other thing that I'll say about Brent is that he's got several times that I met you, you had the coolest bow tie ever. It was made out of wood.
I've got them in so many materials: wood, electronics, feathers, pottery. I've got 100 different bow ties.
And that's Brent. That's all Brent is. He's interesting bow ties and haptic VR. I condensed the whole totality of who he is down to just those two elements. How did I do? What did I miss?
René, that is so fun. Thank you for that off the cuff intro. And really, what a trip down memory lane. You know, that VR experience was actually 360 video. You know, we were working with Samsung and Verizon and IndyCar at the time. This was the early Samsung Gear VR. You know, there weren't a lot of 360 cameras at the time, and so we'd actually made our own. We used Touch Designer to sync together, a 3D printed grid of a bunch of GoPros, so we could do really high res, full 3D, full 360, 360 video. And that was really when I totally just decided I despise 360 video. But for as far as immersion go, you nailed it. I love full body immersion. I love getting people together. I love live entertainment. I've thrown hundreds and hundreds of events. It's a really cool time for all this tech, because it all just got great. I mean, even back then, the Samsung Gear VR was only capable of that sort of 360 video, some really lo-fi experiences. You wait a decade through the Oculus One, which doesn't even at first have translational head tracking, the whole boom and bust of Magic Leap and HoloLens, and Quest 1, and then Quest 2, you can finally do pass-through video in black and white. But to have the Quest 3 and be able to do pass-through video in color and not have it tethered to any other computer and not need any kind of tracking other than what's on the headset. I mean, we have crossed a freaking massive threshold. And it's crazy because I feel like the interest in this domain is at a nadir, and it's like the tech has never been cooler. So I don't know.
Well, there was it was always like in since the very beginning of when I got into immersive art and entertainment, it was always like, what's Apple going to do? Is Apple going to come? When they're going to come with their headset? And they came out with the headset, and it was sort of like, I mean, it's an amazing piece of hardware, but it was also like, it didn't really move the needle in terms of consumer adoption. And so, yeah, it is in a funny spot. Do you know Michel Riac? He's the curator of the Venice Immersive,
Hmm.
among other things. I interviewed him yesterday or the day before, and we talked a lot about how VR is like what attracts us to it. And while both of us certainly would love for VR to have had a larger mainstream adoption, the thing that attracted us to it and still does is that it is such a frontier thing that the people who want to build for it are, the wonderful weirdos who are attracted to the unknown. Um,
Hmm.
and and I think that that's kind of the characteristic of, like, if VR had been completely adopted, I think there'd be something else that probably you and me and Michelle and other people like us be like, oh, we're on to the next thing, just because that's kind of the fun, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where creativity
Well,
lies, in the unknown.
I'd also say that I think that happened, and I think mixed reality is enough different from virtual reality that we can call it its own thing.
Mm.
And virtual reality takes over your whole display, right? You put the headset on and your whole environment has changed, and you can
Yeah,
be shrunk or enlarged, and all of that is really cool.
yeah,
But mixed reality, when you have pass-through video of the world around you, but then you augment that, is its own special kind of magic, because
yeah,
you are looking at the world around you. It's really the promise of original augmented reality, which always failed to deliver because of physics, I guess. I
yeah,
mean, basically, you had the really narrow field of view, battery packs, and all this other kind of stuff. And you've got the two screen problem, which is,
yep,
if I have a Magic Leap on and I want to put a dragon on the table in front of me, my eyes see the dragon on the screen right at my eye, but knows that it's not where it is in front of me. And because it's only 40-degree field of view, I can look around it and sort of see that it's
yep,
not there totally. And so you're totally taken out of the immersion over and over and over again every
yep,
second.
yep,
But in mixed reality, you put it on and you see pass through video of the world, and you're like, okay, the world is just a little lower res now,
yep.
than normal reality. But then you augment that, and it's magical, And I think that's the thing that, for me, is beautiful about the Apple Vision Pro. It's beautiful about the Quest 3. Pass through video in color is amazing. Now,
It
the
is pretty
Quest
magical.
3, it's not, yeah. And the Quest 3 is a freaking, Gen 10 device. I mean, the Quest's been around over a decade. They've been at it for a while. It's $300. It's a well-oiled machine. Whereas the Vision Pro is a prototype, dev kit.
Yeah,
First
yeah,
run. And
yeah.
I think I think that the biggest failure was that there was expectation that was the consumer version. And I think that
Yeah.
it was, that was.
God, I hope Apple keeps pushing, and I hope Meta keeps shoveling money into it, because they have built something remarkable, and there are so many great experiences that are built, because of what that hardware has enabled.
Yeah,
Um, but let's do a little bit more table setting. The first
please.
part of these conversations is always making sure the audience knows who the person is, and sort of where they're coming from. And then mostly what I want to dig into with you is your perspective on creativity. That's like the meat of these talks. That's the heart of what I'm trying to get at, is what is the nature of creativity? How do we become more creative people? And then how do we amplify, creativity in the world? How do we make other people carve out more space in their life for creativity? But just a table set. I'd love to know what you're up to now, and then sort of maybe give us a little bit of narrative for how you got to where you are now.
So you mentioned Two Bit Circus, which is a company I co-founded over a decade ago. High Tech Circus. We've done, traveling events, had our own traveling carnival, pop-up events for the Super Bowl and the Olympics, and ultimately opened up our own permanent facility, a half a city block in downtown Los Angeles. We just made up the term a micro-amusement park, but ginormous with a game show theater and a carnival midway and a reimagined arcade and full food and beverage, we moved out of downtown sort of in 2024, set up a smaller version, a pop-up in Santa Monica, right on the walking mall, the Promenade, the 3rd Street Promenade walking mall. And, in that period had incubated some really talented nerds in LA. Two Bit had all this space, right? 50,000 feet. And we had these offices that weren't really getting used. And so I basically just gave it to a bunch of nerds that I loved. And I was like, hey, you guys are working on cool stuff, and, build here, and then you can take it across the wall and test on Two Bit's audiences. And Two Bit has always been about both showcasing our own stuff, things that, me and my friends have made, but then also other people's stuff. There's lots of other great creators out there, and being able to sort of give people a platform to showcase that. And we have our regular beta nights. We've got one actually coming this weekend at our location in LA.
I saw on your website, as I often do, wished I was in LA so I could come to the stuff that you do.
Oh man, they're one of my favorite nights, because it's like, you might get a splinter, it's probably going to crash, but it's freaking, you're talking to the creator, and it's right there with a new, it's a brand new thing. And even if it's only 80% done, it's beautiful to be a part of that, and the energy of a new thing, and as it's being crafted right there in real time, and it's like, sorry, that just crashed, let me get in there. Oh yeah, that bug you mentioned, it's fixed. That feature you wanted has been fixed. And so it's like, there's some cool stuff that comes out of it, and we've done that for hundreds of companies at this point. But one of them, this guy Aiden Wolf and Kevin Habbick had been playing with the Quest 3, the Meta Quest 3.
Oh, I know Aiden.
Aiden. So he said, hey, come out to the parking lot, do this. We had some drift trikes, which are like adult big wheels. Put me on the drift trike, put me in the headset, and I'm literally in a real life Mario Kart. I'm pedaling around, collecting coins. It's multiplayer. There's a guy in front of me. He just collected coins I can't get. Barriers that don't exist. I mean, my heart rate on my watch said I was doing, I had to go at 150. I take the headset off, and there's nothing there. All of this motivation,
so cool.
I pedaled my freaking, heart out to get around this freaking course, and none of it existed in real life, and that fusion of real life. You mentioned the haptic immersion before. I was on a real actual drift trike in a real actual parking lot with a real actual additional human that I was racing against. It just so happened there was a whole additional layer of gameplay that could not have happened otherwise, and that was special.
Magic. And so that's what you've been doing with Two Bit Circus for, it feels like 15 years, 12 years.
Yeah, and so
a while.
Two Bit incubated what's now called Dream Park. We incubated Dream Park. Dream Park spun out of Two Bit, and
tell me, I don't know about Dream Park. What is Dream Park?
So Dream Park is mixed reality theme park. We are building the world's largest mixed reality theme park. Dream Park raised separate capital. It's literally my full-time job. Me and Aiden and Kevin, we've got locations all over the country now, and just
great. So Aiden's doing this with you. Aiden's part of Dream Park.
Yep. It is devouring our lives. Yeah, we have been devoured by the park.
That's great. So is this going to be like at home? Are you a studio where you're producing content, or does this have a brick and mortar component?
Yeah, that you go to places to do this, so we're actually this minute opening Long Island in a bunch in mall common areas in the Salmonea Mall in Westbury, Long Island. You can go and experience Dream Park. It's a ginormous, tens of thousands of square feet, and you can run around and jump over lava and collect coins. We've got
does the whole mall become the gameplay area, and you have like a booth where you get the headset, or do you actually have all that square footage that you are controlling?
So excellent question. We're doing what we did in LA, where in LA we've got our little 5,000 square foot arcade in Santa Monica. You check out the headset and you walk out the front door. And once you walk out the front door, you're on the public promenade, and there's 40,000 square feet of augmented area. And so Two Bit rents the arcade space, but the rest of it, that's part of this. That's just the public.
So you've got a small footprint where you manage sort of the point of sale. Check in. Get them set up, and then they go explore the area.
Exactly right. And because it's pass through video, there's a curb, there's trees, there's strangers. All of that is okay because you can see them, and they can see you. And my 82-year-old dad could could navigate over the curb and around the big chess set and not, and everything was fine.
Are you still doing the three-wheeler
trike one? Yeah, so it requires a specific venue. So we don't have that in LA or Long Island. We ran that all summer in a pop-up in Seattle, and we've done it. We're doing it in a bunch of pop-up events. We had it at APA, the big amusement park convention, in November. And so for big enough venues, we can do the drift trikes.
That's so cool. Well, I love that this journey has continued and that it's evolved, and that you continue to be inspired as new affordances of new hardware present themselves. you've got such a strong, pungent through line to your work. It all feels like it's very much Brent.
Dude, no joke. The original renderings of 2-Bit from like 2016. It's honest to God taking me like an additional decade to get to where I wanted to be back then.
Well, this is maybe so that's great table setting. We've got a sense of where you're coming from, what you're working on. I imagine that what has driven you to stay engaged with this so long is that you're obviously a deeply creative person. And so I'm really curious, how do you even define creativity? What does creativity mean to you?
I think, creativity is a synthesis of, potentially unrelated concepts to create something new.
Okay, so it's taking several things that are not connected and then connecting them.
Yeah, and the connection itself is a new thing, and so it's once they're connected, there's an aha moment or a revelation. It might be terrible, it might be a bad aha moment, but at least there's a new thing.
So when you're looking for these new things, what do you have any hacks or rules of thumb or tips for how to get yourself into a creative state where you are more open to making those connections?
100%. How much time do we have?
as much as you have, man. I keep these short because I know everyone's time is so precious, but my time is not. So I can go as long as we want to pilfer your mind for all the golden nuggets we can get out.
Oh man, let's get as much creativity out into the world as possible. I 100% have processes, and I really do think of them as, it's an ecosystem and a process, and sort of it's not a one-time thing. It's sort of like a set of rituals, creativity is a muscle, like you would train and do push-ups to be better at, to have bigger arms, there are I think rituals that you can adopt that help you to be more creative, because it's really like how do you fill the top of your funnel of concepts and novelty and new, so that when you are called upon to be creative or think creatively or do something creative, you have a deep well of things to pull from. And it's probably better if it has nothing to do with your domain, right? If I'm in the out-of-home entertainment business, it would be massively creative inducing for me to go to a healthcare conference, or to go to a manufacturing workshop, things that don't have anything to do with your life, because really you want lots of novel input to come together for you when it's time to think creatively. And
how do you know what to sort of put in that hopper? Do you just listen to your curiosity, or what?
Yeah,
how do you know?
Curiosity is the best. If you could give a kid two things, it would be curiosity and grit. Stick with it and ask questions. And because you just start to really figure out, the second that you are able to start to ask questions to the point where you're, hey, how can I get back to first principles? Like, oh, why do we do it this way? And you're like, wait, we do this way because rail lines were what? And it's like, we don't use those anymore. Like, why are we still doing it that way? That's ridiculous, And it's like, once you start asking questions deep, enough times, you can start to figure some of those things out. But I think as a general creativity hack, being able to have lots of novelty in your life gives you this did I just lose something? Oh no. Gives you this ability to have newness when it comes time to think differently. And so one of the ones that works brilliantly is taking notes. And I don't mean on your phone. I mean physical notes. This is in my back pocket at all times. It's literally just a bunch.
It looks like a wallet stuffed with receipts. What is this?
It's like a wallet stuffed with paper. It's literally a fold of leather filled with these 3x5 cards. And
you just take those empty cards and do what with them?
Move them to the front after they're full. So once the cards are full, they get moved to the back. and then on some regular interval, hopefully weekly, I'll go back through this stuff, and it ends up on any of a number of other sets of notes that are now digital. So this is like a staging area. And the staging area is while I'm driving, while I'm, in a meeting with you, René, right? I don't want to be, how terrible is it when someone's on their phone when you're in a meeting? Even if they're taking notes, it's a distraction, and it's a distraction for them because they just got a text message that took them out of the moment. They are not as immersed in our conversation as they used to be, back to immersion and full sensory, immersion. They're not as immersed. They just got distracted and their attention is elsewhere. But also the act of physically writing is better for your memory, right? You are a slow writer, you're a faster typist. If you, as a slow writer, you need to think for a second longer about what it is you're going to write down. And that additional synthesis helps in your memory.
Completely agree.
Right?
I took copious notes in college. I never read them. It was just the act of writing them.
It doesn't matter that you never read them. Exactly right. Just the act of having written. And it's not as the same if you were taking them on your computer, because you can just sort of get into this, like, I would almost call it like a baseline, motor function state where you're just sort of dictation and you're not even thinking about it, So for me, going about my day, we're having a conversation, I take a little note of something I didn't understand or I want to learn more about or something. And then, or you said, hey, next time you're in, Jamaica, you got to go to this place. All of that ends up on the staging area of notes, completely disorderly and just a list of random stuff. And then later,
that's a great hack. That's a great hack. These tips, I love them. I've collected so many. Keep going. I want to know more about this or any other hacks you have.
Okay, so imagine that then back at your computer, there is your note database. And some people, I love Obsidian. Some people just use the app on your Mac or whatever. But it's a note. It's an app of lots of notes. And I have notes for lots of different stuff. I have a to-do travel US. And that's got a list of all sorts of cool things by state that I want to do in those states. I have a to-do travel Europe. What are all the things that I want to do in Europe? You mentioned, hey, next time you're in Amsterdam, you got to do this other thing, and so those things all, but it's like, I'm never going to, the only time that when I arrive in Amsterdam, that I'm going to go back and figure that out. How would I know that you had said that to me 2 years ago? Like I need a centralized place to know that stuff.
Interesting. So you write them down in the moment. It's better for listening when you're with someone because it's single focus. You can't be checking your email while you're writing a note. The person knows that you're just writing it down.
Totally
then
engaged.
In a quiet moment, you reread all of them and have some process, I imagine, of throwing away a lot of the ideas, but then you keep the ones that are important enough and you organize them digitally so that you can access them later down the road.
The domain name 2 Bit Circus came to me randomly driving around Los Angeles one day. I wrote it down on a note. I bought the domain. I didn't use it for 5 years, And then it was like Eric, my co-founder, and I were talking. We're like, hey, we should do a thing. I was like, what about 2 Bit Circus? It was like,
it's such a good name. I love that it's, instead of like 8-bit, I mean, that's part of like the legacy of your family, 8-bit, but 2-bit is like also like a slang for like low quality. You kind of have Carnival Barker thrown into the vibe of that name. It really works.
Thanks. It's actually, thank you. It's a triple entendre, which I was also really happy with. So it's got you, as you nailed it. 2 bits is 25 cents, right? 25 cents was, arcades were powered by 25 cents. Low quality, right? What kind of 2 Bit Circus is this anyway? Really set the bar low. Let's over deliver. And then bits and bytes. Me and my co-founder are both engineers, and so we had our 2 bits of information.
It is a brilliant name. It is, and 2 Bit Circus lives on. It seems like. I mean, you're doing beta night now. But most of your energy is going into Dream Park. That's your main.
95% of my energy is going into Dream Park. I've actually a wonderful business partner in Los Angeles running 2 Bit. 2 Bit had a pop up that was intended to be for just last December in Santa Monica. It is now next December, so it's been there a whole extra 11 months, and great. We're gonna finally at the end of this December move back. We've actually got a very fun announcement coming.
I love announcements. Are we breaking news today, or is now at the right moment?
Not quite yet, but coming soon.
Okay, so that's one way to sort of amplify creativity in your day to day. take lots of notes,
Yep.
be curious about the world, look for things outside of your domain, because that's going to allow you to make some of those unexpected connections. You work in a very collaborative manner, I imagine. Doing
Mm-hmm.
these types of projects necessitate being collaborative because you're
Yep.
often dealing with somebody who's writing code, someone who's the hardware guy,
Yep.
the people running the business side.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of have to be crossing many different domains. So I'm curious,
Truly.
do you have any insights or thoughts around how do you make a group of people more creative together?
Cool. So imagine that we're back at the notes, and you've got your, there was the temporary staging area, there's the deep database of notes, and one of those notes is a new project. And that new
Yeah.
project was some idea, some inspiration you had for one reason or another, and you're just like, gosh, wouldn't it be cool to have Uber for Poodles? And so Uber for Poodles becomes your note title. And as you go about your life for the next few weeks or months, something that you encounter is relevant to Uber for Poodles, and so you put it on your note.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, when one of a couple of things happens, right? You're looking for the timing to be right, the team to be right, funding to show up. Frankly, those are probably the things, team, timing, maybe technology, funding, but like you sort of need a catalyzing moment.
Yeah.
And at the moment that happens, it jumps from the note to some sort of collaborative workspace, right? Slack or a document on, a presentation, a document on Google Workspace. And now you're doing it with somebody else, and you've maybe hired a graphic artist to put a logo to it, and you've got a website, and you've got like every single step along that way, it gets more real, right? The thing gets more real. And my dad used to say, hey, before you even build it, build the marketing materials first. Does anybody even want this thing?
Yeah.
You had a great inspiration. Let's validate it first, before you spend a year of your life to, decide, building it because you think someone might want it. But so you start to sort of take this path, and then you've got your people all together. How can we create an environment that keeps them excited and creative and exploring? And you need a budget, you need a timeline. One of my favorite events in LA is founded by David Gutman, is called Spec. And Spec is a sort of like nerd, top secret nerd night. and when you go to Spec, your very first time, you have to present. And so absolutely everybody in the room has presented. And the presentation is short. It's like 5 minutes on anything you're passionate about. And you basically break down your process of what it is that you went down the rabbit hole on. And there's a bunch of nerds in the room. And so they're all going to nerd out with you on your process, and one guy had averaged together all the photos of Flickr. You know what color it was?
No, what was it? Brown?
Like a burnt orange. And he had all sorts of theories on why that was, and he'd done a lot of research talking to people who made cameras and digital photography and whatever. And so here was this random just deep dive that we all got to do together on, lens characteristics and Flickr database, and another guy who had like had figured out the algorithm for Amex credit card numbers and, what he could do with that as a result. And, it was just like so many fun things. Now back to filling the funnel of creative insight, it's like, if I have exposed myself to lots of creative moments, and you've exposed yourself to lots of creative moments, and our team is out there exposing themselves to lots of creative moments, when it comes back time for us to do stuff, and be brainstorming or be accomplishing things together, we're like a superpower, because we're all now, all of our various disparate insights are coming together. And diversity gets a lot of airplay right now, not just for equal opportunity for people, and their diverse backgrounds, but from a creative standpoint, all the better to have all these different perspectives all together. We used to bring a unicyclist, a physicist, a computer scientist. We tried to get as many different weirdos together because you get
I love that
perspectives. The more you get different folks, and
so just I like doing little digestions as we go to make sure I'm understanding it right. So a big component of having a group be creative is making sure that each member of that group is coming from as different a background as possible, so they have exposure to all these different ideas that they're bringing to the party.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
am I getting that right?
Yeah, we used to ask as a hiring question, "What do you like to do for fun?" What do you do on what are you doing on the weekends? And the
Yeah.
people who were like, "Oh, I don't know, nothing really." I mean, it was like, well, that's the boringest thing you could say. And people who are interested are interesting. And there is when people are interested in things, and so I think creators, creating and creativity comes from creating. Creators come from creating, right? It is an act, and you continue to do it, and in that you become a creator. But you got to just sort of be an imposter for a while.
That's actually that's a great segue, Brent, to one of the things that I always love pulling on. I don't always get around to it, but one of the things that every creative person faces is that sort of existential terror of that chasm of to get to the idea. You sort of have a vague notion in your head of where you want to go, and you have no idea how to get there. How do you overcome those sort of creative blocks when you have to deliver some big idea? Maybe you've got a deadline, but you have no idea how you're going to call on creativity on demand. How do you get across that existential chasm?
Action. You really need to try lots of things and just do stuff, and it's so easy to get into sort of analysis paralysis. But
yeah.
One of my favorite examples, and I use this all the time, is Dan Klitzner, the toy maker who made Bop It. You know Bop It?
No,
Twist
it's
it,
Bop It.
Twist it, bop it, pull it. It's a toy that they sold, I don't know, 50 million, 100 million. I don't know how many tens of millions, hundreds of millions, right? Super successful, majorly popular toy. And when Dan set out to make it, he actually didn't set out to make a toy. He set out to make a new kind of remote control for TVs. And he was like, I'm going to make a remote control that's a football. And it's like, if you push on the laces, it changes the channel. And people were like, no, that's a dumb idea, Dan. And he's like, okay. All right. No, this one's a pizza. You push on the mushroom. And no. Still, Dan, dumb idea. And finally he was like, okay, this controller, you pull it and it changes the channel. You push it, it turns it off, And they were like, Dan, this is a dumb idea. Let's just stop it with the TV things, And so he takes away the TV controller, and it's literally just takes away the TV part, and the controller becomes this crazy, super famous toy, And if he hadn't set off confidently in the wrong direction, he would have never found the toy, And so the act of creating is a process, and you have an inspiration, you go forward and you fail in some way, and then you tweak it, and then you go forward again and you fail in some way, and it tweaks it. And as long as you continue on the path, and you are committed, you will find the solution. You'll ultimately converge there. It might be completely different than what you set off to do, but you're going to get somewhere.
I think that's really brilliant. And I heard Brian Armstrong, founder of Coinbase, talk about how action produces information. And so you want to have an action bias. So, even if it's the wrong decision, make a decision. You will learn from it. And the faster you can go through that loop, the quicker you'll get to something that is working.
Truly. And I actually think that's a hallmark of a great team. Back to your how to get teams working well together, how to get them creative, how quickly can they iterate, how quickly can they, what's their cycle time, and this is one of those places where, remote work is awesome and terrible, for our personal lives and rearing children and some of that kind of stuff. It's wonderful for rapid team iteration and being able to really quickly, analyze and pivot. You really, there's nothing like, again, the immersion of being all together and having no friction to talk and being able to sort of use all of your sights and sounds to have a conversation. So I think there's a real balance there. Yeah.
Beautiful. Here's another thing to pull on that I think you're particularly well suited for. Not everyone do I go down this path with, but I think every creator has to be a business person to some degree, because almost everything, unless you're writing a novel, but even then you still have to deal with distribution and getting a publisher, et cetera, et cetera. Almost every project requires some interaction with fundraising and figuring out how to get the thing that you made out into the world. And I'm really curious if you've developed any insights, like how do you approach that side of the creative work that you do, the fundraising side, the business side? Do you think of it as an art project? Do you just cover your eyes and close your ears and run through it as fast as you can, screaming to try to get through it? Like, how do you make that work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And funding, so much rests on fundraising, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it, right? From crowdfunding to equity investment. Customers are really your best funding. And oftentimes it's you can experiment. My dad used to talk about the lifeboat and the rocket ship, which was like, you got to be able to provide for yourself. That's the lifeboat, but you can tinker and work on the rocket ship, and only until it's ready to take off can you give up on the lifeboat. And the fundraising, I think that advice is for a person personally, but I think it also applies to a business and a project, which is a project is an idea, and then, as we talked about, it's maybe a deck, and maybe it's got a logo and a couple of people involved, but none of them are committing their time in a real way because it's still a volatile startup. But there's this moment at which it gets some catalyzing energy, and that might be a customer. Two Bit had a filter with inbound brand interest, which was, is this potential project, we try to look at it through three things. Is this potential project paying us to work on something that we want to know about? Are we going to learn that Samsung project with the VR? It was early VR. We were building, those cameras didn't exist for anybody. Somebody had to build it. Might as well be us. And so we learned a new thing about virtual reality. And then we did the same thing for Dave & Buster's and learned more about virtual reality attractions. And so it was like that checked a fundamental box. It wasn't just paid vendor who will never, who leaves with nothing. And so there was that. Then are we doing this as a partnership rather than just being a faceless vendor? Is it NASCAR and Two Bit Circus have done a thing together, and so it's, in effect, sort of some amount of marketing. And then the last was, the third filter, is it ridiculously high margin? Because you can sort of buy the first two, R&D and marketing, with high margin. So we were, when it came to those branded partnerships, we would try to, sometimes those brands would say, hey, we want to do this, we just want to be loud. We want people to know that we're doing, but we don't really care what it is, and so we'd be like, oh, well, let us look in our notes of all the things we want to do. Right. And then we can say, hey, here's a few things that fit your criteria, but also fit our criteria. And so we try to pitch. And what's cool about that is those projects, each time you pitch them, they get a little further down the lane. They get a little more finished. And so we had this one thing, we wanted to do a robot bartender for years. And we pitched it to like 5 different brands. Each time we pitched it, it got a new rendering. The deck got a little more polished. The budget got a little more dialed, And so by the time, and nobody wanted to build a robot bartender. So finally, we just funded it ourselves. But by the time we went to fund it, we'd had all of that work already done, And so it's a long story, but I'm trying to sort of get to the big takeaway is, I would think of your projects as a creator, as an ecosystem of stuff, and those timelines can be all over the map. You might have one inspiring project that sits as a note for 5 years because the timing's not right, the team's not right, or whatever, and another project that just goes like white lightning because, Dream Park for us, it just took off. The timing was right. The headset was there. The team all came together. We had the venue at 2-Bit. We could test it. People loved it. We got into an accelerator, and each of the steps just sort of led to the next. And I think and I've had other projects like the robot bartender that freaking just wallowed for years, until they finally saw the light of day. And even then it was a failure. So, you gotta.
So to digest that, I'm hearing a couple of things that we could pull from that story. One is, look for opportunities to have your customers, whether they're individual people coming to your thing or big customers like brands, look for for those opportunities to further your ideas. I heard another thing, which is have lots of ideas that are sort of always on, the back burner or tucked away in a shelf, and you push them forward as you can, and naturally, some projects will take flight when it's their time, and other projects will wallow and die, and that's okay. That's part of the process. So have many ideas and sort of push each project forward as you can. Do you have any insights around psychologically when you've got like a burning passion project? How do you, asking people for money is hard. How do you pump yourself up? Like what moment do you get enough conviction that you're like, I'm going to go ask somebody to believe in this fever dream enough to put money in?
I the entrepreneur is the first believer, right? And you have to believe it so much that you can convince other people to do it with you, and then ultimately money, to be a part of it. And I think that Monday morning, you have nothing else going on, like that thing that gets you out of bed, I think when you have enough projects that you're not precious about them, right? It's so easy, first time entrepreneurs, hey, sign my NDA before I will tell you what I'm doing, or sign, no investor will ever sign your freaking NDA. And it's also ridiculous because these projects are all about execution. The idea is just free, effectively. And the execution is everything. And so I think that there is a moment when you have talked to yourself a bunch about it, and you've done some research, and you've built a prototype, and you've played with it a little bit, and then you just talk to your friends a little bit about it. Hey, I was thinking about this thing, and I was maybe going to do this, or you talk to your potential customers about it. I think the worst thing people can do is be precious and not talk to anyone. What you should try to do is tell absolutely everyone, because unless you just spent $1 billion on drug discovery, like your idea is not special, like, and it really will be everything about how you execute, your timing, the team, and all of those other things. And what you want in that early phase of exploration before you are ready to ask for money, is to get enough conviction from as many disparate people, so that when you go to ask for money, you have a litany of things you have a whole set of things you can talk to them about. And you can say, hey, potential investor, we talked to Target and they're so psyched they're ready to give us free marketing. And we talked to these other guys and they're so psyched they're going to do it for us for just the branding. We talked to these other people and they want to do it for free because all we need, so our $1 million of capital requirement, 900 grand is coming from partnerships. All we need is the last 100 grand. And that's what we need you for. And I think that think of the investor money. For every project, there's a capital stack. And the capital stack is all the different things that are going to need to happen. You got to pay for Unity. You're going to need a lease. You're going to need to, buy a hamster, whatever it is. And how can you replace a bunch of that capital stack with partnerships and creative fundraising and alternate partnerships, so that so that by the time you go to the investor, it's for the smallest amount of money, and they don't want to lose their money, right? They want as little risk as possible, and you have de-risked the project so much by arriving with all of these other things done, right? If the landlord has given you the lease for free, and the construction company is going to build it out for free, and the marketer and the influencers are going to come and promote it for free, man, the investor, you're like, hey, investor, I just need you to buy pizza. That's a freaking incredible deal.
Love it. So build up a true head of steam before even going to ask for money for your project. Really prove it out. And I suppose you mentioned a little bit of this, like, is it the thing that you wake up on Monday morning thinking about? You have to be really careful with. Is it the thing that you actually have fire in your belly about? Because everyone can sense that.
Yes, Yes, exactly. You can't, my dad used to always say you can't fake enthusiasm, and it's really true. You need to really believe, because you are the first salesman for this thing,
Yeah.
and you need to sell everybody,
Yeah.
partners, customers, investors, and so you're going to need and so as a result, you're going to be trialing one-liners. What's the language that gets people to respond, whether it's a customer or anybody else, and it's not accidentally call it an elevator pitch. You have very little time to capture anybody's attention, and I always like to think about a wedge. If I'm talking to an investor who doesn't know you, the very first, you have one sentence in an elevator to talk to them about what you're doing. Is it enough for them to be like, okay, what's the second sentence?
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, you've got me at the second sentence, and now the elevator ride is over. And so they're like, and then you can be like, we should have a call, 15 minutes or whatever, right? And then you give them your card. And so now the wedge is slightly more, right? We're just gonna have a quick call. You got a little bit more time. So now rather than just your 2 sentences, you've got 25 and maybe but you're still now the next step of the wedge, you're going to go in person, and you're going to get longer. Maybe you're meeting a partner, but it's like each step of the wedge, you're expanding the amount of information that you can share. You're expanding your time and your trust level, and I think that to our earlier conversation, there's, the investor wants to de-risk, wants a de-risked investment, and no investment is completely de-risked, but they need to, do they trust that the timing is right? Do they trust that the team is right? Do they trust that the architecture of it is correct, right? Is it going to be capitalized right? Is the vision, all those things? Well, the team part, if they've only just met you, that's hard, because you have no trust yet. And so in parallel to your ecosystem of project growth, whatever we want to call that greenhouse, you also sort of have a ecosystem of relationship cultivating. And so you will have in your life a habit maybe of going to networking events or meeting people at conferences or going to parties or whatever, and try to keep track of people. If you meet someone who's a really great CFO, who's the best finance person you've ever met, but you don't need a CFO person right now, meet them, put them in your contact database with a special note, so that you can find them later.
Write it down on your little piece of paper.
Yes.
Digest it into your database of notes.
Exactly. Because later, when you do need that superstar CFO, that's when you can go back and find them. But you wouldn't be able, if you hadn't taken the moment to sort of catalog them properly, you won't get.
Well, I think that gets back to being curious, is actually showing interest in people, right? And then paying attention. I always make an effort whenever I cross paths with somebody that seems extraordinary on any dimension. I always make an effort to stay in touch with them, which is why, like, we've never worked together, but I always have tried to stay in touch with you because you're doing weird, wonderful things. And that is a very rare, special thing. There's not many people that try to do things that are bizarre, don't exist beforehand, are, off the wall. Like it is something that you notice if you're paying attention, right?
You're paying attention.
Yeah,
that's fun. Well, the feeling is mutual.
Two more questions I'd love to ask if you have time. Do you have till the hour?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. So one is maybe this will be interesting, maybe it won't, but I'm a 5th generation artist. Everybody in my family is a filmmaker, a painter, a dancer, and I grew up. Film was my first love, and my uncle was this larger than life figure who made a couple of really great movies in the late 70s and early 80s in Texas. It was before independent cinema was called independent cinema. It was called regional cinema. And he and Toby Hooper, who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, are really the first 2 directors in Texas that were making movies about Texans, with a Texas cast, Texas crew. And Robert Redford saw my uncle's first film, and he often cites it as the inspiration for starting Sundance. And I always had a strange relationship with this lineage. And my grandfather was a vaudevillian acrobat who performed with the Marx Brothers and Bob Hope and Blackstone the Magician. And I always found myself, whether I wanted to or not, measuring my own success and failures against theirs. And my uncle was a story where he had all the success and then he pissed it away being this lunatic who would like get raging drunk and like punch Michael Sandberg in the face and you know, ultimately drank himself to death. And I've struggled with both feeling like I can't quite live up to that dent in the universe that they made, as well as wondering, like, you know, am I going to end up like my uncle? Am I going to break that weird cycle? And you also come from a very creative family. Your father, of course, was the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, which I loved growing up. I'm curious, how do you deal with being part of a legacy?
You know, we totally lucked out. And, you know, I have 7 siblings. My dad was married twice. He had 2 daughters and then married my mom and had 6 kids, of which I'm the oldest of the second batch.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Big
so
families
fun.
are great.
Always loved having a big family. And Dad was really specific with us from the beginning. He was like, I'm not going to give you any money. You guys are going to do it all on your own. And that's the way it's going to be. And he's like, you can do whatever you want, but I think you'll be the happiest if you'll be an entrepreneur. And he really stuck to those things. And you know, it was really interesting because I watched a lot of people who grew up with a lot of money and were given everything be not very happy, you know.
Yeah.
And I really believe
they always had to question, did they earn it or not?
Is it theirs? They know they didn't earn it. They knew they didn't earn it. You know, sure. There was no question, you know. And I think that I think there is a fundamental human desire for work and creation. And I think if you deprive someone of that, it is like debilitating. And on some, and it's a spectrum, you know. I think people have levels of this, you know, if they are in a job that's unfulfilling and whatnot, you know, it can have similar effects. But I think being able to, you know, be engaged in something, building anything, you know, is a real soul building. Yeah. So I think that's important.
Do you ever feel yourself wondering if you live up to your father's accomplishments? Do you compare yourself to him or anyone else for that matter? As a creator, I think that's something we all do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that, you know, none of my siblings and we never mentioned it. You know, we don't lead with, oh, I'm the son of the founder of Atari. You know, it's like that. Yeah. Those aren't things that and it really came out of being really little. It was so easy to tell who had an agenda. And, you know, we got to be very transparent, frankly, who wanted to hang out with us because of who we were and who wanted to hang out with us because of the fact that our dad was who he was, you know. And that you almost just got a sixth sense for it as a 3-year-old, you know. And oh, wow. As a result, we just never mentioned it. Well, no, it was actually great. It was like we had a superpower because we could thin slice across everybody, you know. Everybody else was just doing it their first time, you know. And so, but I think the thing, you know, he is definitely more successful than I have been, you know. But I also, you know, don't see it as a competition, you know. And I think the more that it's been so fun, you know. A bunch of my siblings, you know, I have my brother Tyler's Polycades are in 2-bit. My little brother Wyatt, we incubated his game before it became the Hot Wheels driving game at every Dave and Buster's.
No kidding, my son loves that game.
Oh, my brother Wyatt made that. It was incubated at 2-bit, and
no kidding. I mean, maybe it's not the same one, but 4 drivers, wheels, gas pedals, or different. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have 2 amazing arcades here in Portland. My 7-year-old son loves Hot Wheels. He loves that game. My wife loves it even more, though. We go there because we love getting tickets, and it's one of the few arcades where you get a bunch of tickets and then you get, you know, cheap prizes. And that one's a big ticket winner.
I
We get a
love
lot
it.
to get
I
that way.
love that you guys know it. Well, so
Yeah.
so we, a bunch of my siblings are all creators. We all, we work together a lot. My sister Alyssa does all the PR for Dream Park. So we definitely, everybody's out there working on something, and as a result, it's been really fun. We all get, we work together. Dad's working on things, and we, we'll give him feedback, and he'll give feedback on our stuff. And so I think it is its own ecosystem, much like that we've been talking about this whole show.
Well, that's one of the lovely things about my family that I do really appreciate. They don't get the business side. Like, they all have sort of an instinctual distaste for money and anything related to that, which I think is actually a detriment to them. I think a lot of creators suffer from that. So I can't really talk to them about that side. They, like, when I was a filmmaker and I decided to go into startups, they were like, had a panic attack. I think they were like, we don't understand what this is. We love you, we support you, but like, this doesn't make sense to us. But it is nice that we can have that kind of creative dialogue where my dad writes a novel, I get to read it and give him notes, and my mom has a new album, I get to design the cover. Like, just growing up, it was lovely being around that.
So
but
fun.
My own strategy for dealing with those expectations is I used to have a lot of anxiety of whether or not I was going to accomplish anything of note. And the only way I found to deal with that was to actively say, you're never going to do anything that will be noticed by anyone. That's not the point. The point is do you feel like you're doing your absolute best work? Like, and put all of my energy, and that plus one other hack, which is find 3 friends whose opinions you really care about. And as long as you're doing work that they care about, like, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I love that, René. God, I love that. Naval Ravikant has a great thing, which, like, ask enough people something, and you're just going to get an average. It's just going to average out to zero,
Yeah.
And so you want to ask the right people, and that's genius. So good.
And it's generally a pretty small group. Well, this has been an amazing talk, Brent. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time. You have so much wisdom to share. You've been creating really interesting, weird things for so long. I feel like we just scratched the surface, but thank you for sharing your time and your mind, and hanging out with me for a bit.
René, thanks for the time. I'm a huge fan of Artizen. Thanks for everything you do. I really appreciate you having me, and this has been a lot of fun.
It has. All right. We're going to do our fake goodbye, and we'll end the stream, and then we'll hang out for a bit as our videos upload. So goodbye, Brent. Don't actually leave.